Hello guys, how do you do? Again, yep, this might be my last video for today. And I just want to talk a bit about some of my experiences when I used to go to the schools here in Iowa, to say the least. Now, not all the schools here in Iowa technically are sport dominated, as I kind of said. But, or I didn't really say that. I didn't say them, but anyway. uh, where do I start? Well, for a time, as you know, or maybe you know, I was once homeschooled. But before then, I went to the school here in Iowa called Baxter Community School in Baxter. Baxter is a small town, of course, to say the least. And it's almost completely surrounded by country. Country. But to say the least, I just sometimes can't believe how many schools are still sports dominated, even to this day. It seems like it's like some of these people they just think that sports are the most important thing, to say the least. That like it's the only important thing on the planet, and then they just say screw it to pretty much everything else. Well, that would have been maybe a little more true in the early 1900s to 1950s, possibly at the most, which is when people started getting less and less into labor, to say the least. But nowadays, it's 2019. But that still doesn't stop people from trying to make schools that are sports dominated, even to this day. And even give some of the kids that are good at sports privileges for being good at sports, because that is still the way that a lot of schools make their money, which is the reason why they think part of the reason why schools still think that sports are more important, because unless these kids are getting proper like skills for work, right, then the people that are giving their kids to these schools aren't going to pay them. They aren't going to pay them more money or anything. And so to them, sports are more important. And that is the reason why. And yeah, maybe sometimes they think that, maybe they're a little more way to the right, to say the least. Maybe their ideals are a little effed up, to say the least. And not really in today's society norms, to say the least. Their mindset is kind of behind in time. And why is that? Well, because of isolation. That's why. Which is why we still have schools like this, even as I am speaking to you. So what it's like to be in a school full of people that just think that sports are the norm, and or sports are more important, etc., and just fuck everything else. Well, you could say I once actually was taking my ag construction class when I was at this school, and we never had the tools for most of our projects. And people always tended to act like things were still the same as it was in the 1950s sometimes. I mean, like I said, they sometimes feel that you still have to do the old-fashioned, American dream, which, of course, when I was homeschooled, I learned was completely full of shit, to say the least. You did not have to go after the old American dream to live a life in America like you used to. But of course, that's what these kids were being taught. So things like ag construction and even stuff like advanced English, were considered to not be very important, especially stuff like that. In fact, when I was taking my advanced English class when I was 18, one of my co-students looked into his book and he saw that one of his uncle's names was in the book in a small town here. Now, let me tell you, if a book with your uncle's name in it isn't out of date, I don't know what is. But yeah, that's pretty bad. And I remember my ag construction class, the teacher would actually have one of the kids teach us because he didn't know jack shit about ag construction. In fact, he probably knew less than I did. And I didn't know a lot. Yeah, those were the days. Then the fact that it is true when you see these kids, they just get special privileges over the other kids just because they're good at kicking a football at practice or something. You know, because they think that if these kids aren't winning at sports and they don't have the kids that are good at these sports like that, then the parents get upset and then they start losing money, right? So, which is the reason why these kids are getting special treatments. Because if they just kind of push the problem under the rug and just act like it's not there, when these kids do something that they aren't supposed to sometimes, like for instance, I used to see a couple of these two football guys. They were the team leaders of the football team, right? And so they just got to throw a football around in class while everybody else had to study. And eventually, of course, kids in the class started asking that reason. And of course, you know, the teachers and everybody just kind of gave their half-assed reason so people wouldn't question it. And yeah, that is, of course, another one of those tropes of schools that are sports dominated, to say the least. Then, of course, the girls in the classes. I sometimes don't even think the women that went out with these guys were even attracted to the guys that they were with. Sometimes I just think that they just did it for credits, to say the least. And it actually wouldn't even surprise me if they're even assigned to be their girlfriend sometimes. Although I don't think that's really the case most of the time, especially in the school that I went to. But you just never know. You see a lot of weird shit when it comes to sports dominated schools, to say the least. And just like I remember how one time we had went to practice. It was actually a short day. That it wasn't a long practice day, and I actually managed to get all my homework done that day. But when I went to my science class or biology class, one of the people that had went to practice with me that day said that, oh, I wasn't able to do it because practice was long yesterday with track. And so he's like, well, that's okay, you don't have to do it then. And I'm just like, what the fuck? He doesn't have to do it? He doesn't have to do his fucking assignment just because he thought practice was long yesterday? I'm like, fuck, I did my homework. But of course, I wasn't one of the elites. So if I had come up to him and said that, I probably wouldn't have gotten away with that. To say the least. And that, in a nutshell, is basically what it is like to be in a school full of retards that think sports are the most important thing on the planet. Or at least they sure as hell act like it. I will end the video right there, and I will see you guys later.